e Peter.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Marco. Thank you, all the group of students. Peter is gonna also say some beautiful words appropriated in a few minutes. I just want to officially present Professor Peter. He's a PhD. He's very expert in leadership in time of complexity and all these evolutionary things that we need to add to the new way of lead. And for the very first time, we can name now what probably all of you are, because we are not more high performance. It's not just about results without any impact or consequence. It's not just the rational without the intuition. It's not just the obvious money outcomes, but also what the legacy we're gonna get. So the book, it's a beautiful connection between intelligence, synchronicity, and other things that Peter is going to explain today about what whole performance really is. But I think you are just going to say at the end, oh, me too. I am that. So, Peter, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Ligia. Thank you, Ligia. Welcome, everybody. Lovely to see you all here. Apologise, I don't speak your beautiful language. I speak a few languages, but Portuguese is a step too far. Maybe I'll have to learn now. So thanks for listening along in English. Yeah, so here we are, like literally this kind of whole performance concept and book manifested in a time frame of about 6 months. And here we are launching it in Brazil.
Yeah.
I have to point it that way. Oh, let me see. Hang on a sec. See if this is going to work now. It was working when we tested it earlier.
I think because you just touched the error there.
Oh, yeah, because we touched the thing, yeah.
Try again.
Yep.
Yes, here we go.
The experts. Yeah, so here we are with the book and the stories. And it was something, although Ligia and I gave it form, I think the moment when we were in Brasilia having breakfast, I think both of us would say it's not something we could either of us claim we came up with. It just landed in the space between us and it flopped out of my mouth. I was like, hey Ligia, it's like moving from high performance to whole performance. And both of us kind of so it's not ours.
No, at all.
And so we're giving it back
through us
now to as many people as we can reach, because we feel it's something that's needed at this time. Now, this is the full cover of the book, and I think you'll appreciate how beautiful it is. Wouldn't you say? What an amazing kind of design this book was. We were very lucky to have students from the Link Art Department actually design this for us. So we want to acknowledge all the people who contributed to the book and who've contributed to the event today. So first of all, I'd like you to give a big hand to all the team who designed this book and the whole performance plan. And we'd like them to come here, we'd like them to come up. Yeah. So Louisa and everybody who's listed here, we want you to come up here. Come on, don't be shy. Come up front.
Enzo, Marco, please. Marco, Enzo.
Oops, sorry, let's go back a bit. And we want to give you a copy of the book.
Yeah, first hand.
You worked so hard on. Louisa, who led the team, did an amazing job. Yeah. And everyone else is.
João. Tá, então fica com ele.
Put together the whole event today.
Yasmin. And Miguel. So this is for the other folks. Yeah.
Thank you so much. It's really beautiful. It really touched me when I first saw the design.
Yeah. Photo.
Man, I tell you, it's because of Brazil that I got on Instagram.
Yes. Officially done. Thank you, team. You're great.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So what are we going to cover? The story's probably about 45 minutes or so, and then we'll have time for questions and discussion. So I'm looking forward more to hearing what you have to say than what I have to say. So think, if as we go along there's something you don't understand just from the language, please ask. If there's something you want to discuss, then keep the questions till the end and we'll have time to discuss afterwards. But do stop me if you're just not following, right? If something's not, or I'm using English which you don't get or whatever. So what we're going to look at this afternoon is, first of all, when we're looking at people in the labour market, employees in organisations, what's the lens we need to look through? What is the world asking of us today? What have high performers brought us? And what are the limits that we're experiencing at the moment? And then, what is this whole performance thing we're talking about, and what's the real promise that they're bringing? So, the context that's important here is understanding things from a developmental perspective, from how people and our societies and our organizations develop. And it seems like an obvious thing to say, people and societies evolve. And we, in nature, we accept everything grows from seed up to tree. We understand that people, when they're born, they grow from baby up to adult, and there are stages of physical development, there are stages of neurological development. But we don't spend much time thinking about the evolution and development of how we see the world, of our world views. Our inner world also develops. It also grows. And there's plenty of research in what they call developmental psychology, which are all these different maps of stages of development that we go through and all these different capacities that we have. And understanding those stages and how we develop are really essential as we think about ourselves and our organizations and the world around us. Those stages, as they evolve, are able to embrace greater complexity. And it's very logical, really, because each new stage transcends but includes the previous one. Right? So as we grow, we have one stage of development, and the next stage, we've already had the previous stages. So there are more stages included in who we are as we further evolve. That means we're able to hold more of reality. We're able to embrace more of reality. The pattern across a lot of these models, in a very basic level, Ken Wilber, who's an American philosopher who developed integral theory, says you move from egocentric, where you're identifying with yourself, to ethnocentric, where you're identifying with a small, close group, to world-centric, where you're identifying with all of life on the planet, and potentially to what he calls cosmocentric, which is where you identify with patterns that are maybe even more universal. There's that general directionality in our evolution and our growth. And the stage model that we're going to look at today is called spiral dynamics, and that describes the different value systems, the ways we look at the world, the ways we make sense of the world. Those evolve in us, and they evolve in our societies, and they evolve in our organizations. But they don't evolve in a vacuum. We are nature, right? As everything else is nature. We are of this earth. We're earthlings, right? We're creatures of the earth. Everything on the earth grows. And everything on the earth in an ecology is the whole time looking to try to fit into its ecology and its environment. When Darwin said it's the survival of the fittest, he didn't mean the one that goes down to the gym the most to build the muscles. He meant the one that fits best in its ecology. Right? Anything ecologically or biologically that doesn't fit anymore in its ecology basically either evolves or dies. That's just how life works. And we are no different. Right? We are constantly searching for our fitness in our context and in our environment. So these value systems, they are ways of coping with the life conditions we experience around us. And if the life conditions change, they become more complex, then we have to evolve our way of thinking, right? And each new value system creates a set of solutions to the world around us, but in those solutions are the seeds for the next set of problems. Right? So then more complexity comes on and we have to change our thinking again. So there are maps of all these different researchers across the world of these stages of development that we go through. And basically, they're the same basic stages that we find we grow through, in the same way that humans across the world grow physically and neurologically the same way. We move through the same stages. So this is what we're going to use to look at this question of where we are now and high performers and the need for whole performers. So very basically, the 8 stages that make up the spiral dynamics model, and I'm going to just introduce them briefly now and go into some of them in more detail later, so that you can see what this dynamic is around high performers, whole performers. Are any of you familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs? That's often taught quite a lot, right? And the point being that if you've not got your basic needs met, your survival needs, you're not going to be able to move on to something more complex because you've just got to stay alive, right? And Claire Graves, who did the research that led to spiral dynamics, was around the same time as Maslow, and they knew each other. The difference was that Maslow has this closed pyramid, and Claire Graves said, no, it's never closed, it just keeps going. Because each new value system solves problems and then creates new problems, and so you have to keep developing more complexity to deal with the problems created by the past one. By the way, apparently at the end of his life, Maslow ended up agreeing with Claire Graves and said, indeed, it's not a closed pyramid. It's much better to think of it as an open-ended system. So the first is the survival self. So the moment we're born, we just stay alive, right? And then what emerges after that is this sense of connection and belonging. So in the first couple of years of a child's life, they experience themselves as one with the mother and the world around them. So they don't have this sense of separation, and that they don't see themselves as a separate being. It's only when this third system evolves, the power self, that we develop the sense of separate self, which psychologically is called the ego. And it's the moment that I suddenly realize there's me and there's another, and I have my own identity and I'm different to the other. So any kind of young parent will know around the age of 2 or 3, your child for the first time says me. Before that, it's never said me. It says me and it says no. No, because it's testing. Ooh, I'm me and I have an opinion. No, I'm not going. No, this is fun. No, I'm going to throw something on the floor and see what happens. Oh, the parents pick it up. I'll throw it on the floor again. There's this sense of, suddenly the sense of self emerges for the first time. And it realizes there's me and there's the world, so it wants to now try to influence and act on the world around us. Up until that moment, so beige and purple, the child has this experience of being connected and hasn't got that experience of separation. So it's a key moment in our development when we develop this sense of separation. Now, at some point, what happens is that this self then realizes it needs to fit in. Right? There's a society, there's a family, and it wants to learn the rules. So what we're always doing is we're swinging between these two poles of needing to express myself and needing to fit in to a collective. Right? That's the whole dance, the whole time. And these colors at the top are colors that are about expressing the self, and the colours at the bottom are the colours about fitting in. So if we express ourselves to one extreme, we start to at some point feel a bit lonely, and we try to go back and we try to fit back in. Right? And then we start to feel a little oppressed or suffocated by the collective, and we go, but who am I? And then we swing back again to an expression of who I am. But we don't go back and forth to the same place, because each experience we have brings in more complexity, which means we go back to a different place, right, on the I side or the we side. So that's the basic story. So the I in the power self looks for the rules. Boom. I conform, I fit in. Okay, now I know my place. I know if I do this, this will happen, reward, punishment. The things, by the way, which a lot of postmodern parents find very hard to do. So there's many children who've grown up finding it not being given boundaries and structure by parents, which is actually a very important part of human development. And then once you know the rules and you fit in, at some point you get itchy again, and you're like, yeah, but I'm going to challenge these rules. I'm going to try to find my way. Why should I just listen to the boss? Or why should I just listen to the parent? Or why should I just listen to the priest? I'm going to go and work it out myself. That's the emergence of the orange achiever self that decides they're going to be the best of themselves. Go out there, play the game, and win the game. So when you walk into Link downstairs, what's this a place for? What does it say? Yes, thank you. This is a place for winners. This is a place that loves orange. The achiever self. We're going to get to the top, we're going to make money, and we're going to grow our business, and look at all the numbers on the wall that show how many businesses we've created and how much money we've raised from investors over time. That's orange. And it's great. It's freedom. Right? It's freedom to express ourselves. Get out there, play the game, be the best, get the highest potential that we can out there. But at some point, that becomes lonely again. And we're like, I've got 10 cars and 3 yachts and a private jet, and I'm still not happy. And at that point we turn inside and we start to discover our emotional world. We start to discover that there's something else that makes me happy, and it's about connection to people. It's about place, it's about going for a walk in nature. It's things, and what you start to become interested in is harmony and well-being. And you start to care. You start to care about other people. You start to care about the impact of what you're doing. You start to care about the environment around you. And so your kind of strive to come to the top flattens out into a desire to connect and belong and feel happy. And now I can rest, right? And then that's kind of where we get to in these first phases. And what's interesting is what happens next, because in the research, what Claire Graves found is that when you move into the yellow value system, what they call the integral self, there is a quantum leap in our ability to deal with complexity. Each of these new stages adds complexity, but when you move to yellow, the ability to deal with complexity skyrockets. And the reason for that is that the integral value system, for the first time, is able to see and value all the earlier value systems. Right? It can see that they all have a function. They all have a role to play, and it's not judging them. It's asking, now, which of these value systems best fits, or do we need to bring together to solve these problems that green has started to care about? So the sensitive self looks at the world and goes, oh my word, what a mess. There's so much pain and suffering out there. And it kind of wants to share those emotions, but at some point, it's like in the we, and it's sharing with everybody and making sure everybody's voice is heard and feeling the pain. At some point, the I comes up and goes, yeah, but shouldn't we do something about it? And so that's the swing back to yellow, and it brings back in that orange drive to make a difference, but then not for itself, but for the good of the whole. That's the difference. But yellow is about impact. It's like, how do we make a difference in the world? What do we need to pull together? It becomes very functional and very focused. How can we be as effective as we can to make a positive difference in the world? It's still trying pretty hard, and it cares deeply, and at some point what happens is that yellow realizes it is so complex that I can't deal with it purely from my rational mind. it reaches the limits of the power of the rational mind and realizes there must be another way of knowing to be able to get a sense of the whole. Because even with the best of our systems thinking, it's way too complex. And that's when turquoise emerges, which moves beyond the rational intelligence and starts to sense the whole from a more intuitive knowing. So what yellow does is it takes all the parts and tries to stitch them together like a puzzle, like a jigsaw puzzle. It's like helicopter view engineering. Turquoise assumes the whole and then notices how all the parts are moving within that whole, assumes that it's already one and already connected, and is much more of a kind of intuitive feeling about that reality. So that's, in a nutshell, the journey. So the question is, what are all the aspects that we need to pay attention to in that journey? And I've always found this a very useful framework for that, which is Ken Wilber's 4 quadrants, where he says, look, and what he did, because Ken was interested in all these different models and theories that are out there. They all seem to be right, but only partially right. So what's the framework that explains how these different models and theories fit together? Classic kind of yellow question. And what he said is, well, look, we've got the individual and we've got collectives. And then we have an inner experience, which you can't see, and you've got an outer experience, which you can see. So the individual, you see their behavior, you can analyze their behavior, you can do a physical check on their organism, and without actually talking to you, you can measure this. You can look at the systems and structures and processes in our organizations and societies. You can measure them and analyze them without talking to anybody, right? But we all know that we all have an inner experience as well. And so inside the individual is the value system or the reason for the behavior. How are you interpreting your reality? How are you making sense of it, right? And in the collective, there are these webs of culture, so these meaning-making systems we have with each other, these values we share with each other, that you can't see by just watching people, right? You watch someone behave in a certain way, but you don't know why they behave in that way. You actually have to talk to them. You have to get into their inner world and find out what's going on. So often these are seen as conflictual. For example, a conflict between science and spirituality. Ken says, look, they're just 4 perspectives, and they always all exist. It's not an either or. They're just different perspectives on the same reality. And what happens is development happens through all 4 of these quadrants. So as I was describing earlier, our self, our understanding of the world develops, but we see that mirrored in our neurology. We see different brain structures emerge as different value systems come online. We see our cultures have value systems that move from more ego, ethnocentric, world-centric value systems. And we see the way we organize ourselves change, right? From a predict and control, for example, up to a more flexible organizational system, up to a more circle community system. So our ways of organizing reflect the value systems that we're living. So they all flow through all 4 quadrants. So these are the value systems that express themselves in these perspectives. So if you have an individual who has a certain value system and in working in their inner world, which is driving their behavior, and they're sitting in an organization that has a different set of value system in its culture and therefore creates its reward systems based on that value system, you're going to create stress, right? Because if let's say I'm emerging some of this green value system, which is all about caring and everything else, and the organizational culture we're in is orange high performance culture, then you've got a misfit between the individual and the collective. And that's when you start to experience stress, and when people are likely to leave your organization because there's a lack of fitness between the individual and their context, right? Their collective context. So always thinking about these four quadrants is a very useful way, a lens to look at any particular situation. Okay, so that's the kind of meta framing, as it were, and we're going to go into applying that now in different contexts. So the question really is, so what? So why is this relevant for the kind of world that we're in? So let's take a look at the world we're in today. Obviously, this kind of information has been around for ages with the VUCA world, volatile and uncertain. The complexity that has increased over the last few decades, where all these different issues are accelerating, they're reinforcing each other, they're creating life conditions which are so complex that our old ways of doing things can't cope anymore. This came out of, this word hypercomplexity came out of actually a IBM CEO study, 2012 already, when the one word they pulled out of the study was hypercomplexity, which was a new word. So it's sort of like these CEOs had to create a new word to explain that the world was even more complex than complexity. It was hyper-complex, which tells me that these guys, and the occasional lady back then, had very little sense of how they could cope with the world around them. And they just hadn't a clue. They could see this massive complexity, and they didn't know how to lead their organizations in that context. So this kind of change moment is what we would call a non-linear moment of emergence. So this is not a linear change moment we're in. Like linear change is where gradually things move, you can see it moving, you can almost predict and control your way forward. But we're in not just an era of change, but we're in a change of eras. And when you're in a change of era, you get these non-linear change dynamics. So these are different moments in our collective history where we've had these kind of moments, and we're in one right now. And the thing about non-linear change is that you can't see what the next system is going to be. Like it has in what they call emergent properties, properties that pop up that you couldn't ever have imagined from the old way of thinking. It's like walking into a cave where a monk is transcribing the Bible and trying to explain the internet. Right? It just doesn't compute. Can't get it. So these kind of change moments have a different dynamic and require a different way of thinking. And this is how I made sense of it in the Evolutionary Leadership book. So when we create solutions, like I said before, like let's take the Industrial Revolution, right? That was a set of solutions to certain problems. It's brought great help, it supported us to evolve and solve many problems, but the seeds of the problems that were in those solutions is what's now coming to the surface, right? That we're having to deal with. And in those moments where you know that the old system doesn't work anymore, but the new system isn't mature enough to take over, right? That's what the system scientists call a chaos point. A moment we can see it happening in the world right now. It's all breaking down, right? We can see the mess, and we see very few leaders, if any, who actually have the solutions to do things in a new way. So it's a chaos point where we don't really know what's coming next. And in those chaos points, you get this new system start to emerge under the radar as people experiment, test things out, try out, oh, maybe we need to do it this way or that way. Meanwhile, the old leadership has to keep the lights on, right? They have to keep running the show, even though a lot of them actually know that it's defunct, that it doesn't work. But they don't have the bandwidth to kind of do the radical innovation that's needed for something new to emerge. So the point is really, the speed with which we manage to allow something new to emerge determines the amount of pain and suffering as the old system collapses. It's just nature and biology. The quicker we learn, the quicker we evolve, right? The longer we hold on to the old ways of doing things, the more pain and suffering there is because those solutions fail to work anymore. So we're in one of these moments of emergence again. Right, so we've got this understanding of human societal development. We've got an understanding that we're in this context now where the old ways aren't working anymore. And so high performers, right, were a great solution to some problems. But it's not enough for the complexity that we're facing at the moment. So high performers comes out of this orange value system, right? This achiever self. Remember I described that earlier? It was beautiful walking in downstairs to the lobby and seeing this beautiful display of orange in the link lobby. I was like, that's great. What a great example. And so let's just go into a little bit and look at this value system first, and then how high performers have been an expression of that. So this value system, the achiever self, its core drive is to achieve, improve, and win. To have the freedom to go after the results that it needs. It wants a lot of autonomy. It's very rational in terms of its problem solving. It's like, don't give me any kind of faith stuff. Give me scientific rationalism. Give me data. Give me proof. Its strengths is the entrepreneurial energy, the creativity that's in that, and the ambition. Being able to think strategically, focused on goals and delivery, very innovative, driven by the data, wants to know what's really going on, and highly effective in that context. In the workplace, it loves a challenge and opportunity because it loves solving problems. It values autonomy, so don't tell me what to do, give me the freedom to go and work it out. To go and hit targets, to drive for progress and productivity, and impact that can be measured. The kind of warning signs, as it were, within this value system are it can become very individualistic. It's very focused on the individual achieving what they are out to achieve. It can chase status. It's all about status, right, and growth at any cost. That's the risk. And part of that cost can be your own personal well-being, but it can also be the quality of your relationships with other people, because ultimately it's about achieving your targets, not about keeping people happy. And purpose, like the why of what I'm doing. Don't question the why. Hit the goal. So that's the orange kind of value system, and out of that has emerged this high performer concept in a lot of our corporations and organizations today. So like the orange, it's focused on these results. It has generated a huge amount of productivity and efficiency in our systems. The previous value system, the blue order-driven value system, is a bureaucracy. It's a hierarchy. You have to go all the way up to the top, and then it has to come all the way down. Orange and the achiever self, it's all about self-organization, efficiency, productivity, getting on with stuff. So orange has really created a huge amount of value for us in that. In the workplace, you see it's all about the targets. There's a lot of high energy. And really, this high performance culture is what's built our modern organizations and our markets in the world. Globally now, kind of exported from the first industrialized countries, and now really global. It's very good at it's being able to solve huge problems at scale. If you see the kind of average life expectancy has increased across the world. And it's also given people this sense of freedom, the possibility to be able to go out there and express yourself. So the high performer has made a major contribution. But we're starting to bump into its limits, right? Like with any value system. There are human costs of burnout and stress. Currently, the greatest economic cost to our companies today, burnout and stress. Our own identity is tied to winning. So who we are is, do we achieve our goals? If we achieve our goals, good person. If we don't, bad person, right? And we tend to ignore the needs for rest, for relationship, and for our own inner life in these contexts. There are cultural costs where competition is what it's all about, and that can sacrifice trust and collaboration. People are valued for their output and their status, and not so much for who they are as a person. And a fear of failure often drives the high performer, which means they might just bend the rules a little bit sometimes. Yeah, so people will kind of tell a great story because they want to be seen as achieving, whereas the truth might be a little bit different. Limit strategically is that the high performer focuses more on short-term results than on long-term impact, because it's a quarterly cycle. The complexity is reduced only to the things that can be measured. Remember, orange is all about measure, show me the data. But we know that the human is quite hard to measure. There's a lot of other stuff that's hard to measure. And if you only value the things you measure, you miss a whole lot of other stuff. And these moments of quiet, where actually if you speak to any inventor who's come up with a brilliant idea, they didn't happen when they were thinking really hard. Mm-hmm. They got their insights when they stopped, when they went for a walk or took a shower or whatever that was, or sat under a tree and an apple fell on their head. That was when the insight happened. That was the innovation. So innovation doesn't come out of the rational mind. Innovation comes out of the spaces when we stop for a minute. And of course, the success of high performance means if there's going to be winners, there's also going to be losers. So it can accelerate the whole inequality. And the growth, economic growth, as we've seen, can come at social and ecological cost. And our organizations actually lose their resilience because they're not able to see the bigger picture. They've kind of almost got blinkers on, like a racehorse, running down the track and trying to win the game, but you don't see the bigger picture of what's going on around you. So the conclusion, at the moment is orange has played a role. We're not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. We're not saying we don't need this energy, but we're saying it's not enough for the complexity that we're facing today. So this is where the whole performers come in. So the whole performers are an expression of this yellow integral value system, maybe with a little bit of turquoise. And that yellow integral value system, like I said, is interested in solving the big problems, solving the major issues, and pulling together whatever's needed. And it's no longer attached to its own identity and what people think of it. It's about the mission. It's about the impact. It's about getting stuff done. And if somebody doesn't like what you're doing, then you don't get worried about it. You don't try to appease them or make them happy. You're focused on the goal. But you are listening for feedback the whole time. Let's go into a little bit of this, of what the integral self, which is the underlying value system here, means. So the main drive for yellow: understand, integrate the different pieces needed, and evolve, move forward. It's got the freedom to respond to complexity, so don't get paralyzed by complexity. Make sure you see the whole picture. You don't have the racehorse blinkers on, but you're able to see the whole from a helicopter view. And you're looking for the coherence across those perspectives and the systems. You're like weaving things together, but for a goal, for a certain goal. It's able to adapt quickly and integrate things, take feedback, because yellow doesn't take things personally. Right? If they get feedback, they don't take it personally, they see it as information from the system. And then they'll decide, is that actually something from me, or is it more their projection? And we'll be doing whatever it can to get as clear as possible about the distinction between the two, which is where things like mindfulness and meditation and all these kind of practices help, because you don't get caught up in your own mind anymore. You're able to see it and you're able to notice your patterns. You're comfortable with uncertainty, So yellow knows that the system is massively complex. It's way beyond anything we could actually ever understand with our rational mind. So not knowing is fine, right? You just act on what you do know. So challenge or paradox is interesting. It evokes curiosity rather than contraction or fear. And it notices patterns across things, how different things are interconnected. It's not taking everything apart, which is what the rational mind does, but it's noticing relationships between things. In the workplace, it loves complexity, fast-changing environments. It needs its autonomy and freedom, but at the same time, it's always looking to collaborate and learn, but with the focus on impact, on the kind of impact it wants to make. Strategically, it's looking for the integration, innovation, and it's doing whole system thinking. Okay, how do we understand all the different elements of this, including the inner worlds and the values? So that 4-quadrant approach, yellow is trying to take it all into account. As with any value system, it has its issues, particularly early on. Because it's trying to deal with the whole system, it can seem a little detached and a little conceptual, may overcomplicate things because it's trying to collect too much information, right? And because it's holding so much complexity, it may find it hard to communicate things simply in the early stages of its emergence. But this value system, as the original research shows, is able to deal with the kind of complexity that we're seeing in the world in a way that the orange achiever self value system isn't, right? And the reason for that is because it's been through the green value system. So the difference, what makes orange yellow, what moves the achiever self to the integral self, what moves the high performer to the whole performer, is the experience and integration of the green value system. That's called the sensitive self. That's the deal, right? If you want to develop the integral self, you have to do the inner work. So let's go in and take a look at what this green value system involves. The sensitive self is all about connection, empathy, equality. It wants to connect, it cares deeply. It's about meaningful relationships, finding shared values, authenticity. So just show up and be real, like express who you are, feel along with other people, empathy, involve people, participation. Its strengths are deep compassion, ability to collaborate and support each other. It cares about fairness and listening and inclusion. And it's all about building trust and belonging, as well as psychological safety. In the workplace, it loves it when you've got people working together and when people are aligned around the values that they share. Teamwork, purpose, spends time like appreciating people. It'll give you feedback and tell you about the kind of good things you're doing. And it brings engagement because it's human, right? It cares about people. It's people-centered leadership. So yesterday, when we were at this SWILE experience event, it was all about, you had a lot of people from HR there. And a lot of people were talking about all of this stuff, basically about how important this was in the organizations. Like humane leadership was one of the terms, for example, that was being used. You could see how alive the green value system was there. However, it has its limits, which is why we have to anchor ourselves in yellow if we're going to make a difference. And the limits are that because green cares most about harmony, it cares about harmony and belonging, right? That it can avoid conflict and it can avoid hard decisions. Because if you take a hard decision, somebody might not be happy with it. And what green really cares about is people being happy. It could in that context, it's over-prioritizing harmony and consensus. So green can spend ages trying to get to a decision. because he wants everybody to agree and be happy with it. It's beautiful. You watch it at work, it's all heart-based, it's full of love and compassion, but it's not very efficient. So it can lose its effectiveness through indecision or blurred boundaries. So green will put off a decision if it feels that taking the decision will disturb the harmony and the good feeling in the room, basically. So this value system, it's all about emotional intelligence. It's all about interpersonal intelligence. So it brings a whole bunch of intelligences online that actually end up making it more effective once it starts to move back into action. So if you just brought green into a company and an organization as the kind of end goal, you'd have probably a very happy workplace, but not very good results. Because people would be very internally focused, keeping everybody happy and harmonious, and they take their eye off the end goal, of what you're trying to achieve. So you lose the performance piece. So that's why you have to integrate the orange high performer with the green sensitive self to get you to the whole performer. Because then what happens is that these multiple intelligences come online. So as you move into yellow, what happens is green kind of colors orange the other, right? Takes that high performance to a next level that brings in all of these human aspects. And you suddenly not just have your cognitive intelligence, but you've got your emotional intelligence, so you're able to read and get information from the emotional field. You've got the ability to build and maintain relationships for collaboration. You're starting to get some intuitive intelligence, these insights, because you're not caught up in the rational mind. You've taken a step back from it. There's space for the right brain to work as well, which means the space to make connections, which the left brain wasn't making in purely the rational intelligence. It starts to develop somatic intelligence, so that feeling in my body, to stop ignoring it and to notice that, oh, it's a bit of information. Like if I'm sitting in the room and we're trying to come to a decision and I get this gut feeling, right, you can just ignore it. But how many times does that gut feeling actually tell us that there's something important? And your mind doesn't know why we shouldn't make the decision. All you can do is say, my gut's telling me this isn't the right thing to do. And it's only a little bit later that you realize why it was saying that. But there is a somatic intelligence, a bodily intelligence that comes online, we have access to. And this systemic intelligence that helps us to see the bigger picture as a whole. And that these things come online as we go inside and develop those senses, because they're different senses really that come on with the green sensitive self in our development. So obviously what happens a lot in corporate contexts, and what the burnout a lot is about, is that people have been in these orange high performer contexts, and this is just natural evolution, right? So they've evolved through orange, and then the next stage starts to come online, the sensitive self, and they suddenly kind of have these emotional intelligences, this kind of intelligence about relationship, and they find themselves in an orange high performer culture that they just can't deal with, that they say, this isn't right. And that's when, remember fitness and Darwin, right? They don't fit anymore. And when we don't fit in a context, our body starts to wind us down. It's purely biological and ecological. It says at the moment, you can't contribute. We need to wind you down, you need to rest, and that's where we get burnout. So what happens is that this value system comes online, the corporate culture isn't able to value it or make room for it, and these people leave. Or they burn out and cost the company a huge amount of money. Right? Purely because in our businesses we don't understand human development. The map is there. All the research has been done. It's not rocket science. Right? All we need to do is understand that at some point people are going to start to develop these other sensitivities. And that those aren't a problem. They're actually bringing online more intelligences They're going to help people perform more effectively in our businesses. But they're not going to work 10 hours a day, sacrifice their mental health, sacrifice their well-being, and sacrifice their families and communities for the sake of a business that they have no stake in, just to make more money for somebody else. It's like, are you insane? Why should I do that? Yesterday there was this guy, Michel, what was his second name?
Michel Alcoforado, ou Coisa de Rico.
Right? And he was showing us some data. And which generation was it?
Z.
Gen Z. Guess where work was in terms of their priorities? Number 5. There were 4 other things that were more important to that generation than work.
Family, mental health, body, all those first.
All this kind of stuff. Right? Those people are not going to work for your organization if you have a purely high performance, orange driven culture. So if organizations want the best people who are going to be able to deal with the complexity of the world today, they're going to have to change their cultures or create cultures that make space for the whole human being. I mean, oh, well, that's kind of a normal thing to do, isn't it? Like, wow, that's a tough one. Should we want the whole person to come, or we just want them to bring their head? Why don't they leave the rest of their body in the car? You know? So, but we've got caught up in this whole kind of high performer culture. Our whole global economy, our whole global economic system is rooted in this orange value system, which is why the corporates have developed these kind of cultures. But the world has changed, and it's changing very fast. And the only ones that are going to survive are the ones that are able to make space for these other intelligences. Right? And that means you've got to make space for the whole human. So it should be the norm that our CEOs, because you need CEOs who've got integral self-intelligence, right? If they're going to be effective leaders. We should be seeing our CEOs building meditation into their daily practices. It should be the norm, right? They should be able to take time to process their past traumas so that they're more available to be effective in the world. This should be the norm. If we were intelligent as human beings and we understood the kind of challenges we're facing in the world, we want our leaders to be whole humans, because they've got the full spectrum of intelligence to be able to deal with the challenges we're facing, not just a walking head. So, once you get to yellow, you start to be able to integrate all the different value systems, from the kind of beige survival needs, understand this kind of pre-rational need for belonging and trust, right? People just need to feel they belong. It's not a rational thing, but to build that into your culture of the organization. They're able to access power to act when you need to act. Right? If stuff needs to get done, it needs to get done quickly now, and you still have access to that. You understand the need for clarity and order and structure, the blue value system. You understand that we still need to achieve and set goals and use the best of our strategic thinking from the orange value system, but you also understand we need to look after people. Right? And then you understand we need to connect up the dots through the yellow value system, and you understand that actually there's more to it all than our rational mind can understand. And there are kind of intuitive intelligences and senses that we can start to develop that will actually make us far more effective, because it'll all be run by synchronicities. So we could develop, it doesn't exist yet, but we could develop like a whole performer index, because we have the tools to be able to measure these value systems. We have the research tools that can track in organizations what individuals' value systems are and how they experience the culture of their organizations. So we would be able to see, who has this capacity for structural clarity, for strategic drive, for empathy and collaboration, for the systemic integration of yellow, or potentially even the flow-based consciousness for emergence and presence. We could track those. And if we were able to track those, we'd be able to support, our HR departments would be able to support the natural evolution of people in their companies And instead of the people who are developing these higher level intelligences leaving the company, they'd stay. And they'd help the company to deal with the complexity that we're facing. So this is the possibility we have now, is to be able to actually measure, you know, where people are in their value systems. And the moment that, for example, they're exiting orange and the high performer, to put them onto the sensitive self track. So they don't need to burn out. Right? Because most people, when they do burn out, they never come back. So like, I'm not going back to that toxic working environment. Are you mad? But if the companies were able to understand how we develop through these stages, then we can build the containers to support them, and those people will come back, and they'll be able to do a lot more with less time and effort than the high performers. Because high performers, like, a lot of their stuff is, there's a lot of ego involved, and a lot of it is the busyness is just to show people how important you are. I'm sorry, I'm very busy, I've got a very important call. You know, the next call, you know, and a lot of it is, oops, sorry.
Yes, it's exactly like this.
Just like that.
It's just like that, yeah. So you create a lot of chaos, you know, when you do that. A lot of it's just rubbish, right? A lot of it's hot air that actually has nothing to do with what needs to be done. But when we learn to slow down, we start to be able to see the acupuncture points. Right? We start to be able to see the leverage points. If I was just to do that one thing, it would shift all these other things. But then you wouldn't be so busy. And you'd achieve your goals, but with a lot less effort. It wouldn't look like you're trying hard. Right? Because you're not. You know, in the consciousness research, there's a principle that's called the release of effort effect. When you stop trying, it happens. Have you ever had this, like you've lost your car keys or something, you're running, where the hell are my car keys? Oh shit, I don't know. And you stop, oh, there they are. Right? This is all research, the release of effort effect. Because when you're trying, your brain contracts, right? It's all very left brain, you're trying. And then you stop, and you relax, and ooh, you can see it, something that you couldn't see before. I'm sure I looked there. You may have looked, but you didn't see. Okay? So imagine teams in this way. Imagine teams that can integrate these different value systems. So when conflict emerges in a team, it's not a fearful thing, right? But conflict is information. Tension is information. Life emerges through tension. Right? So people are into manifestation, for example, and intention. What does intention mean? Intention is putting something into tension between what's true now and what's possible. And tension is what pulls in information to transcend the tension to a new solution or innovation. So tension is just information, nothing to be scared of. And Yellow's like, tension? Fantastic! What's it got to tell me? Right, so conflict becomes generative in that sense, and it's not polarized. And we have, you know, a context that is safe, where there's trust and clarity, where the boundaries are clear. People would be able to take aligned action because you've also been able to build the relationships and you work with the collective intelligence. You know, it's when you've got a team and you lean into something together, and you accept that no individual has the answer, but as you collectively inquire, something drops in that none of you could have come up with on your own. And those are deep innovations, insights that happen there. And it's when you learn, so it's not about me having the answer, I need to show I'm the best, I've got the answer. No, it's like, actually, I don't know. And when you accept you don't know and you lean into it together, that's when the collective intelligence kind of happens and you get these breakthroughs. And people would understand that we need all these different value systems. We need them to play their roles where they're appropriate, and we need to understand people change and evolve. So we need organizations to move from the Industrial Revolution design, right, to a more regenerative, organic design, containers that enable humans to express themselves as fully as possible in service of a higher goal, and impact. So that means cultures that build trust, honesty, and psychological safety. It means a clarity of what my role is, but also a flexibility of how I go, who I collaborate with to get stuff done, a kind of self-organizing capacity, just as nature does. We need distributed intelligence, so it's not just the person at the top who needs to know everything, but who has which piece of information and how do we all pull it together at the right time. And as I was saying earlier, we need to be tracking people's development. We need to understand that growth isn't just about growth in numbers, or growth in results, or growth in the brain. It's growth in how we see the world, growth in our abilities to be able to engage the world effectively, how we evolve inside ourselves. Right? That's as important as how we evolve physically. And ultimately, as you can imagine, if we were able to unleash whole performers into the world, we'd see a far greater and positive society in the worlds around us. See, remember that this movement, as it were, this emergence, it's an emergence of evolution. Right? It's emergence of evolution in the individuals around us because they're experiencing this massive complexity of the world. Okay? It's we have the ability to be able to adapt and evolve to our environments if we're given the chance. It reminds me of Mikhail Gorbachev, who used to talk about ruthless realism. He says, like, you have to look reality in the eye, face the complexity, face the challenge, even if it's something you can't deal with, because when you really accept the way things are, it enables your system to evolve to be able to respond to it. If you pretend, the world's fine, why should you evolve? Your mind's going to go, I just keep doing things the way I've always done it. But if you actually look it in the eye and face it all, we have that capacity to evolve. And people are already, which is why Lydia and the New Humans team are finding all these people that they're calling new humans, who are thinking in new ways, right? They're the whole performers. It's emerging because we are evolutionary beings, because we evolve as nature evolves. So we're going to see this increase. That's why this whole generation, the Gen Zs, are refusing to go and work for companies that are purely high performer driven, right? Because they've developed the sensitive self intelligences, and there's no way I'm going to work there. In fact, what I'm going to do is start up my own little business. Oh, I'm going to go to Link and build like a startup enterprise that's going to outcompete the business that I could have gone and worked for. Why? Because you've got more intelligence and more capacity to deal with complexity. So it's either going to happen outside the existing companies, your whole performers are going to get together and build the new businesses, right? Or the companies can choose to adapt and be places that these people can come and contribute and help these businesses be successful. It's not a choice for the individual, because we're all going to evolve. It's a choice for the companies. Right? Can our institutions evolve to make space for the whole performers? The ones that do will survive and thrive. The ones that don't will fail. Nature is ruthless. Evolve or die. That's the bottom line. And it's the bottom line not just for animals and the ecology around us, but we're part of that. It's the bottom line for us. It's the bottom line for us as a species. Right? Evolve or die. Simple. It's just the way it is. But the potential we have is huge, right? Because those intelligences are coming online anyway. So we have the capacity to build a society like this. All the things that we want to have. We just need to wake up, and it's very simple. We need to understand how humans grow. Understand how we develop. It's really not hard, right? Oops. So Don Beck was the guy who developed the whole spiral dynamics model together with Chris Cowan. This was me and him many years ago. Well, this is my favorite quote from Don. He said, "There's no more prizes for predicting the rain. There's only prizes for building the arcs." The question is, are you ready? And this is a poem that my brother Tim wrote that I'm going to share with you to finish us off. Are you ready to let go of this 20,000-year eddy which we know is just an undertow? We be tuning into the real flow, here and now. You can't compute the impact of this Link Institute. It's like taking off the mute on the voice of life, stepping onto the edge of the knife, a slice of how humans might be. Can you see what we've done? Can you see what we have begun? This the form which holds the storm. We feel the creature of learning, burning. Invite the world in, it ain't no sin. She's turning at 40,000 miles an hour. That's a fact. That's power. The Big Bang rang, sang, echoing onto the mount, a blast from the past at last. Too much to count the years of evolution, the earth, the human suffering and compassion, because we're booming. That's a fusion of chaos and confusion, away from the illusion of wealth. Our revolution is coming with stealth. Can you see what we've done? Can you see what we have begun? Do we dare to share the future of how humans might be? Do we dare to be free? Do I dare to be me? To be fully human? Love confusion and drop the illusion? Now we're booming. Do we dare to step into the places we most fear? Become clear. Find a community. True to me. I'm not being cute. There's no parachute. We already jumped out the plane. Do we dare to become sane again? This ain't about brain. It's about living the future now. Yes, is the answer to how. We're moving and we grooving. Let's stop. Listen to me. Can you see what we've done? Can you see what we have begun? My sisters and brothers from other mothers, we are the ones where the ocean meets the shore. We are the ones we've been waiting for.
How are we doing?
Good. Thank you very much for your attention. Originally, Marco, we had like until 5:30. Can we go a bit longer in the space?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. What I'd suggest is why don't you just take a couple of minutes to ping pong with your neighbour. Like process what you heard. And then see what questions you might have. Right? Comments, reflections or questions. So just take a couple of minutes to process with your neighbour first.